Okay, so this lesson is for the higher pupils only. That's because the National 5 course doesn't demand that you understand how to work with what we call intermediate conclusions. However, at higher level, there is the expectation that first of all, you know what an intermediate conclusion is, and second of all, that you can represent these intermediate conclusions not only in the form of standard form, but later on you'll also be learning how to present these intermediate conclusions in the form of an argument diagram. So what we're dealing with now is something that's a little bit longer than the arguments that have been presented to you already. So by now, you'll understand what the components of an argument are. We've got premises and we've got conclusions. Now, in order to identify intermediate conclusions, it's good to have your understanding of your indicator words, the words that indicate your premises and the words that indicate your conclusions. Because when you read extended passages, those words will help you to identify intermediate conclusions. So let's get started with this lesson. So arguments are often longer and more complicated than the ones we've examined so far. Many longer arguments contain an intermediate conclusion before the main conclusion. Now, an intermediate conclusion is a conclusion which appears in the middle of an argument. So you've got the main conclusion, but you can look back and you can see that there is another conclusion in there, but it's there to serve as a support for the main conclusion. This is a bit wordy, but in practice, this should make a bit more sense. So the definition of an intermediate conclusion is a conclusion that is meant to serve as a premise for a later conclusion, possibly the final conclusion of a complex argument. Now, when I say complex argument, in higher philosophy, the only complex argument you need to worry about is the kind with intermediate conclusions. And you'll only be asked to present arguments with intermediate conclusions either in standard form or as serial argument diagrams, which is what we're going to have a look at later on. Not in this lesson, but later on in the course. So let's have a look at an example. Here's an example here. I've put the answers on here, but I'm going to show you how you actually get from this to this, because me just showing you this is useless. So let's go to my Word document. So here's our example argument here. Don't you agree that eating meat is just wrong? After all, it involves harming animals. I think it is wrong to harm any life because all life is created by God, and anything created by God is sacred. Surely it is wrong to harm something that is sacred. So what we've got here is a longer argument. Don't worry about the one down here. This is going to be another example that I work with in this video lesson. So first of all, let's put our statements in the order in which they come. So not into standard form just yet, but just in the order in which they come. So let's have a look. First of all, our first statement takes the form of a rhetorical question. So the rhetorical question is, don't you agree that eating meat is just wrong? Now the aim, remember, of a rhetorical question is to imply the truth of the content of the question. So it's not a question that is looking to find out information from you, such as what time is it, what day is it, how many Cheerios does it take to overfill the bowl or whatever. A rhetorical question is used to serve as a statement, and what it's doing is it's just implying that the content of this question here is true. So we can reword this rhetorical question as eating meat is wrong. So what that rhetorical question is doing is implying that it's wrong. Well, don't you agree that eating meat is wrong? That implies that eating meat is wrong. Next statement. It involves harming animals. Okay, so it says, after all, it involves harming animals, but remember, when presenting in standard form, we need to tidy up the argument so it's as crystal clear as possible. So, it involves animals. 3. Number 3. I think it is wrong to harm any life. So, we've got another premise. And we won't reword it totally. We'll get rid of I think, and it'll just be, it is wrong to harm any life. And then we've got the next one, because all life is created by God, number 4. So all life is created by God. Number 5, anything created by God is sacred. The last one, it is wrong to harm something that is sacred. So surely it is wrong to harm something that is sacred. Let's just get rid of the surely and put it is wrong to harm something that is sacred. Now, first of all, have a look at those 6 sentences that we've just listed. Those 6 sentences are all statements because they have got a truth value. So they can be proven to be either true or false, or can at least be considered to be true or false. So what you'll notice is, first of all, our conclusion, eating meat is wrong, appears at the start of an argument, or at the start of this argument, not an argument. So this is our conclusion. And we know this, it should be the copyright symbol. This is our conclusion because all of these other statements give support to it. But in order to understand exactly how it does, we need to consider the relationship between these premises and the conclusion, because we also have an intermediate conclusion. So let's work it out. So if I just start with eating meat is wrong, it involves harming animals, it is wrong to harm any life, all life is created by God, anything created by God is sacred, it is wrong to harm something that is sacred. If I say it all at once, it's a convoluted mess. What we need to understand is how do each of these premises support one another to get to this conclusion. So let's get started. Premise 1, okay? Premise 1 is actually all life is created by God. Now the reason why this is because it directly leads into this claim here, and it also leads into this claim here. Let me show you how, okay? So, premise 1, all life is created by God. Premise 2, so if I put that here for reference for you. Premise 2, anything created by God is sacred. So that's premise 2. Next up, premise 3, it is wrong to harm something that is sacred. Okay, premise 3. So we've got our first 3 premises in order. Now, next up, if it is wrong to harm something that is sacred, then that means it is wrong to harm any life. Okay, so this is our first, and it's the only intermediate conclusion in this argument. So we put our inference bar, and then we put IC, intermediate conclusion, it is wrong to harm any life. So that becomes our intermediate conclusion. And then we've got our main conclusion, eating meat is wrong. So we put premise 4, it involves harming animals. Again, we put our inference bar here. Conclusion, eating meat is wrong. Now, how have I got from this to this, to this. Well, let's have a think about that, okay? So, what we have here is the first three premises here. All life is created by God. Anything created by God is sacred. It is wrong to harm something that is sacred. Support the intermediate conclusion that it is wrong to harm any life at all. So that's our intermediate conclusion. And it's supported by these three premises here. So we've got our intermediate conclusion, it is wrong to harm any life. It follows then, or premise 4 follows from this, it involves harming animals. So if it is wrong to harm any life, and eating meat involves harming animals, we can draw the conclusion that eating meat is wrong in this argument. So what you need to do when you are thinking about intermediate conclusions is consider first of all what the main conclusion is. Then consider what the premises are and what the intermediate conclusion is, and then consider the relationship between the premises, the intermediate conclusion, and the conclusion itself. Okay, so it's not just a case of what's in order is right when it comes to presenting in standard form. I'm going to give you an easier example right now, and this one is probably more like what you're going to be asked in the exam. So, Raj wants to audition for a local rock band. He plays guitar, but is also a good drummer. The band plays gigs all over the city, and therefore Raj would need a car to transport his drum kit with him to gigs. Raj does not have enough money to buy a car, and consequently, it might be better if he auditioned on guitar. So, what have we got here? We have got another argument which has got an intermediate conclusion in it. Now, this argument should appear to be a bit easier for you because, first of all, we've got indicator words that indicate a conclusion. We've got therefore, and we've got consequently. So, what we have here is an argument where our two conclusions, or our main conclusion and our intermediate conclusion, have been identified. So, first of all, let's go back to listing our premises. Raj wants to audition for a local rock band. He plays guitar, but is also a good drummer. 3, the band plays gigs all over the city. And we've got a statement, therefore, Raj would need a car to transport his drum kit with him to gigs. 5, Raj does not have enough money to buy a car. Consequently, it might be better if he auditioned on guitar. So, in this argument, we have got an intermediate conclusion. Our intermediate conclusion is premise number 4, because it supports the idea that it would be better if he auditioned on guitar. Now, this argument is a little bit easier to put into standard form. So premise 1 is Raj wants to audition for a local rock band. Premise 2 says he plays guitar, but is also a good drummer. Premise 3, the band plays gigs all over the city. And then we've got the word therefore. So that indicates an intermediate conclusion. So intermediate conclusion, therefore, Raj would need a car to transport his drum kit, his drunk kit. You can tell what I'm thinking about, his drum kit with him to gigs. Premise 4, Raj does not have enough to buy a car. Conclusion, consequently, it might be better if he auditioned on guitar. So, this is this argument presented in standard form. What we've got here are 3 reasons why Raj would need to transport his drum kit with him to the gigs. First of all, he wants to audition. So that's a consideration that he needs to make. Second of all, he plays the guitar, but he's a good drummer. And the band plays gigs all over the city. So if the band plays gigs all over the city, then it follows that he would need to have a car to transport his drum kit with him to gigs. With a guitar, you can just carry it over your shoulder. With drum kit, you'll be lucky if you carry that with you all over the city. Premise 4 then, Raj does not have enough money to buy a car, so therefore, consequently, it might be better if he auditioned on guitar. So what we have here is an argument with intermediate conclusions presented in standard form. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 examples that I want you to complete for me and submit. And I'll have a look over them, and that will be your experience with using intermediate conclusions in presenting in standard form. Now, this is really good practice for when we get to argument diagramming, because serial arguments involve intermediate conclusions, and identifying them is really key. I think I'll also give you a task where I'm going to get you to identify main conclusions and intermediate conclusions, but I'll see if I can source that. I've got this big folder that I've made up with all these tasks for you, but I need to sort through them. So for now, have a go at the questions that I've assigned on this lesson and let me know if I can support you in any way. This is where the higher starts to get a little bit tough. But then if it was a higher, if it wasn't tough, we wouldn't really be putting it into the higher course. So it is challenging, but keep with it, keep focusing, and let me know if you need any support.